right now, following the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic, farm businesses have suffered tremendous setbacks. And so, as I speak to you, I can tell you that I have several of my farm CEOs who have actually shut down their poultry farms, shut down their layer operations, breeder farms, and things like that. And some of them have actually told me they've become contractors to support their families. So that puts more pressure on the government to prove, to walk their talk with regard to saying that they want to support farm business, they want to encourage farm business, they want people to go back to the land. Now, in my case, as a person who provides support services to farmers, I am trying to walk my talk as well by looking at ways I can support those who are still in farm business to do better. So, without taking much time, it's with regard to livestock farmers and how they can cut down costs. One area has always been the challenge of finding out how to reduce the cost of feeding, which tends to be what most people spend like 70 to 90% of their money on in terms of running their farm business operations as livestock farmers. So a lot of them have to explore alternatives to conventional feed ingredients, which are becoming increasingly high priced, prohibitively, high priced, and it's making it so difficult for many of them to keep going. So this series on feed formulation and compounding is an online audio video based series, and the goal is to give the interested farm business owner some practical ideas about how they can explore alternative feed ingredients by doing a lot of experimental feed formulation using available ingredients in the area that the farms are located. All right, so without wasting time, I just want to give some background that I think might be useful, because I think it's important for people to have the right mindset if they want to succeed in farming in general and livestock farming in particular. The first thing I want to mention is that I, who provide support to farmers, do not run a farm. I have not run a farm for over 15 years of supporting farmers. But just like the extension agent or the person who's the bank credit officer does not have a farm in his own, and the bank credit officer does not have a farm business, but they are the ones that evaluate the farms and support and kind of make recommendations to the bank, for instance, to give money to a farmer to expand his operations or operations. It's the same way that I've been providing value. And of course, those of you who are my clients already, you know that one of the main things I offer is that I offer software solutions, I offer web marketing support solutions, I also offer best practice farm management solutions, okay, by way of a variety of things, one of which is what I'm doing right now. Okay, so the thing to note is you need to set up a system on your farm that allows you to deal with, or to how to put it, to let me put it this way, to cut down on your variable costs. The variable costs are the things that the expenses you incur in the day-to-day running of your farm business. You see, at the end of the day, your farm business is designed to make money. So if you are not making money or not making enough money to yield profits, then you have a problem. Now, we know that the cost of feed ingredients can increase the cost of your operation and therefore reduce the amount of money you make in form of profits. So the question is, what can you do about those ingredients? Can you find alternatives to them? Most likely, yes, especially to those main ones that are like they are 60%, 70% contributors to your cost. So things like maize, sorghum, sorry, not sorghum now, soybean, things like that. You can look at alternatives to them, and there are a variety of alternatives. How viable they would be would depend on the kind of animals you're feeding, how available they are in your neighborhood and things like that. But apart from that, before you even get to that, there may be opportunities for what you call quick wins, and that's why I'm doing this particular video clip or recording. You see, the quick win opportunity will come from identifying what are the elements that make up your variable cost on a daily basis. So what are the things you routinely have to spend on daily, weekly, monthly, all right, to keep your farm operational? How much of money do you spend on maybe water usage? All right, how much of money do you spend on electricity usage? What amount of money do you spend on labor. Maybe there are the farm labor, there are farm hands, and there are certain things you have to give them. I don't know, maybe it's a daily allowance. I don't know how you operate your farm. Some people have on-site farm operatives or farm hands that live on site. Some have the one that come and go, and there may be some cost element attached to that. You may have to be the one that foots their transportation bill, maybe by way of allowance on a weekly basis or whatever. You just need to sit down and look and do. Just sit down, take a pen, and sit down and write out a list of every single thing you spend money on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, that adds up to your costs. When you do them, now look at what are the controls you have in place to check whether they are the quantities or volume or frequency of usage of those things is optimal. In other words, for instance, I'll tell you a unit of measurement or performance indication. There's something called usage rate. So, for example, even water has a usage rate depending on the enterprise you are running. So in the brewing industry, for instance, we have what we call the usage rate for water when you come to brewing. So there's so and so liters of water per hectoliter of beer. So the amount of water that's used in the brewery for a month's period, for instance, will be measured against the volume of beer that is turned out from the brewery for that month. And now that will cascade down. You look at every area where you're using water and you ask yourself, you check yourselves, is there any of these areas that we're using more water than we need to? Then use another brewery or other breweries or other markets where you have similar operations to compare. You get what you call a standard, and you say, okay, in the average brewery of our capacity and our type, what is used is maybe it's 10 liters of water per hectoliter of beer, that kind of thing. I'm just giving this just now. You now say, okay, that means that if we're going to operate, we can give ourselves an allowance of maybe extra 2% because we know that we are not as efficient as those other breweries in those economies we're talking about. And so we'll operate at 12. I don't know. Okay, what's 12? What's extra 2% of that? Whatever it might be, you say whatever that value is. Okay, as a percentage. And then you begin to measure your usage like that. And you try to see, is there any variation? If there's a variation, how much variation do you have? What is causing the variation? And I'm using water as an example, but that applies to even all your feed ingredients. You see, it could be that you could achieve some massive savings in cost if you just began to monitor your operatives and how they use your grains. If there are some operatives that are being naughty, and it happens a lot, they come to your farm, they have extra bags tucked away in their sacks tucked away in their bags. When they're closing at night, they take an extra kilogram or two of each of your feed ingredients from bags that have been opened. You don't know that. Now that builds up, that accumulates at the end of the month. Extra kilogram or two at the end of the month, if it's 1 kilogram per day, can turn out to be 30 kilograms by the end of the month. That's significant. Now you add that on top of your normal usage and you begin to think your birds are overfed. But then you're looking at the fact that they're being overfed like that because the usage rate is kind of above the average that you expect, and yet you don't see commensurate returns in terms of the performance of the birds. Maybe they are broilers, maybe they are layers or whatever, maybe they are pigs, or the animals. So the point is, if you know what your average usage should be, for instance, with a poultry layer enterprise where you have laying birds, the average should be about 100 to 100 grams of feed per bird, all right, in a day. Now, when you're looking at your usage rate and you begin to see some average of maybe 120, 130 grams per bird, you need to ask your operatives what's going on. Why are we feeding more? Is it that the birds are eating more, or the feed is so poor in energy content and other nourishment that you need to feed more, so because birds are not satiated? You've got to find out why it's happening. But the only way you can find out why it's happening is if you're taking records of what is being used. So what I'm saying is that without even looking at alternative feed ingredients, just checking what your usage is currently of your feed could yield opportunities for you to save significantly in a way that impacts directly on your profit margins and actually allows you to make more money. The interesting thing is that what I just said now is something that happens literally in any area of life. I'm going to end with this short story. I have a client. He used to be the head accountant of a large hospital in Lagos, but now he has, for several years now, been running his own consulting enterprise. He's a chartered accountant and auditor. And he told me the story of how one of his clients, a millionaire, was sharing with him about a facility he had taken from a bank, and said that he had an account he had opened with them. And he said he was always shocked to see that um, he was getting some significant charges applied to his account, but he didn't know how to debate it. He didn't know what. And the man said, the accountant told him, "Can I see the papers for that?" And they went and printed out all the details. And when he went through, he found out that actually the banks had been charging him illegally for some things. So there were some illegal charges that were being applied to his account, but because he was not contesting them, the bank had just been raking up money and taking away the money, from his account. Because the accountant was knowledgeable about it, he then took him to the bank and they had a meeting face to face with the bank manager, and he pointed out all the areas where he saw that they were overcharging them. And with that, the bank immediately, within 24 hours, reversed all the charges, and he made a net recovery of about 2 million naira. Now you think about that as if it's your process. No, think about it as if it's your own farm, and you had your operatives who were taking things and overusing certain things. Maybe not even overusing them to feed the birds, but actually taking them away and diverting them. This is something that happens a lot, so I know what I'm saying. Giving an example, I'm actually giving you an example. I'm pointing you in the direction you may want to go. All right, and you have your farm hands who are doing that, but you didn't know. You weren't checking. Nobody was measuring. So if you were to go back and begin to measure, go back and look at your records and look at the number of birds you turned out, whether it's a batch of broilers, and look at the volume of feed that was used, and do a calculation, knowing what the average consumption of the birds should be. Put in a percentage of 1 or 2% on top, and see what you end up with. Then use that as a basis going forward to measure whatever your operatives are doing. Already from that, you have opportunities there to make some huge savings, because it's like that some things will be thrown up in terms of efficiencies. I've used feed as an example, but this could apply to other items you use that are variable in nature. Okay, it could be even the drugs they're using. It could be a variety of things. All right, just think of any other items you use on your farm that cost you money significantly on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and begin to measure them, begin to count, begin to keep records of them, and begin to review. Suddenly you may find that you begin to discover a pattern. And like I said, you have to check what is the optimal usage required, so that when you know the optimal usage required, you can peg usage to that and challenge your operatives to stick with that usage level. That way you have savings and you avoid over usage, and you just find out that actually you're spending less. So sometimes before you begin to look at, feed is expensive and things are expensive, I need to maybe reduce my operation size or whatever, it could just be that your operation is inefficient. And if you check that, you may be able to get your farm back into full good health and not need to take any drastic decisions. All right, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Cheers.